Hi, this is Sue, and today in this podcast I'd like to talk about Christmas. And the question is Christmas still the same or is it different? So, we are now at the 22nd of December 2025, 3 days before Christmas, and all the chaos, joy, and different emotions that are stirred up by Christmas. And I thought we'd talk about that. Now, Christmas, a lot of people assume that everybody's going to have a happy Christmas, but for those of us that have had bereavements very close to us, there's always going to be a tinge of sadness about an occasion like Christmas when we would normally spend time with those that we love. And one of those was my son Adam. So he passed away in 2020, not long before I got diagnosed with Parkinson's. So his loss will always be felt keenly at this time of the year. So we all go through changes as we go through life, and the Christmas that we used to have when our children were small, if we had kids, and the Christmas that we have when they're older, when they're paired up with others, can be markedly different. And it's learning to adjust, learning to change how we do Christmas and who we do it with, really. So I thought I'd give you an example of a Christmas tradition that had to undergo some changes because of the changes for the person concerned. So I used to work with people with dementia, in the early stages usually, in the community. And one of my patients, her husband came to see me one day, and it was leading up to Christmas. It was probably mid-November to late November. And the husband came to see me, and he was really frustrated and annoyed with his wife. And I said, well, what's going on? Why are you frustrated and annoyed with your wife? And he said, well, she's always made Christmas cakes for all the daughters and daughters-in-law. And, she's done it every Christmas for years, but she's really struggling at the moment. She's tried to make the Christmas cakes, and basically they're just not turning out right. They're burned or something's wrong with them. She's forgetting ingredients. And I said to her, look, don't get so stressed about these Christmas cakes. I will just go and buy them some Christmas cakes. Instead of all the stress, let's just buy them a Christmas cake. And his wife got quite upset, and he said, I don't know what the big deal is. They'll still get a Christmas cake, and it'll be from her. And I said, no. This is not about Christmas cake as such. I said, when I've had a chat with a counsellor years ago, and she talked about relationships, and she talked about the roles within those relationships. And for this lady, as I explained to the husband, for years she had made these cakes for her children, for her daughters and for her daughters-in-law, and that was her gift to them at Christmas. And that gift to them was not just a cake, it was not just food. It was a thing called acts of service, is what the counsellor talked about. Doing something to show your love rather than saying those 3 words, I love you. So as I said to him, this is important to your wife because they're not just cakes that you can just go and buy at the supermarket anyway. They are her I love you in cake form. And you could see the penny drop, and he said, I didn't have any idea. And I said, well, your wife is changing. She's not coping very well with making the Christmas cake. But by the sounds of it, it's been something really important to her. And I said, how about we try this? How about you talk to your daughters and your daughters-in-law and see if they will come round. Get them to come round and see Mum first and just say, Mum, you've made us this beautiful Christmas cake every year for years, and we've really loved it. And you've done all the work and you've made us these Christmas cakes. But it occurred to us that we would really like to pass on that tradition, that we can pass it on to our children when it's our turn to do so. But we don't have your secret recipe, and you've been doing it for years. Could we all come round and make these cakes with you so that we learn how to do your recipe, do your beautiful Christmas cake, and it gets handed down? And the husband reported back to me and said his wife was so happy that the girls had come round to do this. And he said, and they would say things to her like, we've always loved your Christmas cakes. We always look forward to them every year. And thank you so much for showing us how to make it. And it was a really good process because, one of them might say to them, Mum, what was the temperature I was supposed to put the oven at? I'm not sure. How do I find that? Am I mixing this right, Mum? Or is this enough candied peel? Is this enough of this or that? And they were constantly asking her how to do things, even though they could read a recipe. And it made her feel valued. It made her feel part of Christmas. That thing that she had always done for years and years could carry on through her daughters and her daughters-in-law. And that's important. But it illustrates not only the importance of some of the small things at Christmas, but the way that we need to adjust sometimes, adjust our expectations of ourselves and adjust the expectations of others in the family. Now, just because you have done a role, which for me, I was always in charge when Christmas was at my place, I might cook a turkey and a ham, I'd make several desserts, I would work everything out and organise everything, and the kids just needed to show up basically. And that worked for me. I enjoyed, even though I used to moan a bit about all the work, I enjoyed seeing people happy and eating food that I cooked that they were enjoying. But with my various operations, I've had to let go of a few things because I couldn't physically lift things. I couldn't have the stamina to do some of the things for a while, and that is improving. But it's about, I can still have Christmas at my house, but the daughter and daughter-in-law and the son, maybe they can get stuck into doing something to be part of the process so that they are contributing by helping with me get the food ready or with setting up the barbecue outside, those sorts of things. So when my children were younger, it was easy. I could just say, this is what we're doing for Christmas, and they just basically took what was offered and were perfectly happy. At least I think they were. And we had a lovely Christmas. Just with anybody, if your makeup of your family is changing, it changes the dynamic. It changes how we do things, and it changes how we do Christmas. So when your kids are little, like I said, you can tell them what you're going to do. You can tell them what we're going to eat. There might be some negotiation. I've been negotiated out of having turkey, which saddens me, but I'm the only one that seems to like it. So when your kids get partners and they're serious, then they have to get themselves not just to my Christmas, but to hers or his Christmas. And it's about trying to find the time and the energy to do all that. So we've been juggling that for years. And my son, who lives in Wellington, comes down every second year for Christmas and brings his lovely family. But in every alternate Christmas, we were spending with my daughter and her in-laws. And this year will be different, as was last year, because they're not her in-laws anymore. And that's another story we don't need to talk about because we will go off on a tangent. So there was always trying to fit in around other people. And I rang my daughter after a conversation with my husband, because I had talked to him and said, I think we need to let go of having Christmas with all the kids. And I said, no, I think with everything that's going on within the family, with the changes within the family, that the girls don't need to have to try and fit us in the day on the day at Christmas. And I said to my husband, how about you and I just spend Christmas just the two of us? So go somewhere nice for a meal, maybe stay the night, and just do Christmas just the two of us. And he loved the idea. And when I rang my daughter to discuss it with her, she was absolutely rapt that she didn't have to go anywhere, be anything. She could just relax on Christmas Day. So that's what we've settled on. And I think in life sometimes when these things occur, when changes within the family structure happen, that you have to be prepared to change and to embrace change. For those of us that have Parkinson's, there may be roles that we're accustomed to having that need to be changed. For instance, I've always been the one that's done the ham, that's done the turkey. If I got to the stage where I couldn't carry the ham or carry the turkey, even as far from the bench to the oven, I would need somebody else to do that for me. And I might supervise, but they might have to do it for me because it would just be too heavy. Little things like wrapping Christmas presents. Do you still have the dexterity to be able to get the sellotape, which of course always folds onto itself or splits, or you can't find the end? All the annoying things at wrapping presents. You might have been able to manage that by yourself before, but it may be that somebody needs to be another pair of hands to help you wrap those presents. Just helping with some things that are getting difficult. We have a Christmas tree at our house that lives in a bag in the shed. So yes, it's not a real one. I, for years, absolutely refused to have an artificial tree. I said, no, it's just not right. I have to have a proper tree. And every year I would hassle my husband, well, he wasn't at the time, he was my partner, would hassle him and my sons to say who was going to go and get me a tree. I need a tree. So this one year, again, we have this Christmas discussion. Who's going to get the tree? And the boys were going, oh, I can't be bothered. Do we have to have a real tree? Do we have to have a tree at all? I said, yes, we do need to have a tree. And my husband was kind of muttering in his corner, something along the same lines. And the next thing I know, he's saying, why don't we just get an artificial tree? And I said, oh my God, no, I hate artificial trees. I'm not having an artificial tree. Well, by the end of that conversation, that afternoon, we were going to have an artificial Christmas tree. So it was quite close to Christmas, and my husband said, I'll go and sort it. So he went into one of the department stores, and they had some displays with some Christmas trees for sale. And he saw one standing all made up, and he said, I'd like one of those, please. And she said, look, I'm sorry, but that's the only one we've got left is our display model. And he said, can I buy it? And she said, well, we don't have a box or anything, and, you know, we don't want to have to take all the decorations off. He said, no, I'll take it as is, and with decorations and all, made up and with decorations and all. So that's what he did. He turned up at home with a Christmas tree complete with all the baubles all over it. He'd walked through the car park with this tree and stuck it in the car, fully made up, and then just had to go and plonk it in place when he got it home. So that's the Christmas tree that we've had ever since. And it actually looks quite good, I have to admit. So that's just one less hassle that we have at Christmas. But I am the person that decorates the tree. Now, my husband would not have a tree, given the choice, but I always have to have a tree. We're not really doing it this year. We've got a tiny one, but not the real one. But anyway, we always have a Christmas tree, and I always decorate it. But I'm wondering, I certainly can't stand on a stool to get the high bits. And if there's tremors and things present, putting up a Christmas tree and decorating it can be quite difficult to do. Maybe it is that you get your grandchildren to help, and they might do the physical stuff, and you can tell them where you want things positioned. You can still be part of it, but if you're not safe to stand for long enough, or if you reach, you have a risk of falling, then co-opt some of the families, you know, your sons, your daughters, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, whoever's around. Say, hey, I need help with the tree, I can't do it by myself anymore. It may be that you might have a tradition where the head of the household, the male, if you will, in a traditional family, I'm saying, not necessarily that it's just men that carve the turkey, but in some cultures it is the men who primarily will cut up a turkey. Now, if your husband or partner, if he is the primary person for carving everything, and he has symptoms of Parkinson's that cause him to have tremors, that's probably not the safest thing to do. So again, it's another thing that you have to look at and just say, is that safe to continue, or do we need to get somebody else to do it? And he can supervise and tell them how to do it. So he's still involved, but he's not handling sharp knives with the shakes. So again, another way of looking at how does Christmas look? Is it the same or is it different? If you have a large family and they usually gather together for Christmas, this in itself can cause some stress and agitation and anxiety perhaps for those of us with Parkinson's. I know that when I'm in a crowd of people and they're all talking, because my voice seems to peter out at the end of things, it's really hard to kind of inject yourself into a conversation. You've got lots of people sort of reminiscing and talking and chatting and laughing, and you're trying to keep up, and You might struggle because you're not processing things as quickly, and it's tiring as well. So your voice may give out at the end of a sentence, or you just might not be able to keep up with what's being said and what's being done. So it might be that you find somebody that you can just sit down with one-on-one and just talk about Christmas and have a chat, rather than being part of a big conversation where it's hard for you to keep up. Just subtle things that might need to change. The other thing is, I find I greatly need nana naps on really, really busy days. Just having a space and a time where maybe everybody's had dinner and there's an agreement that everybody just has quiet time. They read, they play on their phone, they sleep, but just quiet time so that the person with Parkinson's can relax, and when they're relaxed, I would hope that others are relaxed as well. So just something to be aware of, because talking in a crowd, it can be really tiring and really difficult for those of us with Parkinson's. So those are just a few of my thoughts on Christmas and how it might change, how you might adapt it so that it suits you at your level of functioning as a person with Parkinson's. It is an individual thing, whether you've got any traditions or not. Do you have things that you as a person with Parkinson's may struggle with now? How can you adapt that? Can you adapt that? Will you maybe be able to teach somebody else to do what you used to do and supervise them so that you still feel involved? Can you still do baking, or do you need to have somebody do it for you while you supervise to make sure that the Christmas baking that your family relies on and looks forward to can still happen, and you're passing it on to the next generation? So just some thoughts on Christmas, and I hope that you can find a way to enjoy Christmas with or without your family, and that Christmas brings some joy into your lives. This has been Sue for Parkies and Me, My Journey with Parkinson's. Kia kaha, be brave, be strong, be you.